Hallo und herzlich willkommen. Schön, dass Sie zuschauen. Im Gespräch heute geht es um Mindful Leadership und ich spreche mit Marc Lesser. Marc Lesser ist Führungskräftetrainer und Experte für Mindfulness. Mein Name ist Usha Swamy und ich bin vom Arbor Verlag und ich freue mich sehr, Marc Lesser jetzt hier zu begrüßen. Hello Marc, great
Hello,
to see
Usha.
you here. And great that you have the time and that we have the opportunity to talk about mindful leadership. And I'm really curious what you have to tell us about it.
Yeah, thanks. It's really nice to be here this morning.
Yes. And first, let me introduce you to the German audience. You come from two seemingly different places. The one is the Zen tradition. You have spent many years in a Zen monastery and you practice Zen meditation and mindfulness meditation. And on the other hand, you are at home in the business world. Like you have an MBA degree, you had your own company, you are the co-founder and former CEO of the Google's Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. So you bring both together a contemplative tradition and business administration, and you work as a mindfulness-based leadership trainer. And that's really interesting. And you also wrote a book about it. And this book just has been released in Germany at Arbor. And that's also the reason why we talk today. Thank you again for taking the time. And let me first start with a question to your Zen experience. How did it come that you started to meditate, and what makes meditation an important aspect in your life?
Yeah, I think that one of the events that led to my starting meditation practice was when I was 20 years old and was an undergraduate at college. I went to a place on the East Coast in the United States, Rutgers University, and a book that was assigned for a psychology class was called Toward a Psychology of Being by Abraham Maslow. And in that book, he uses the phrase, which I had never heard before, called self-actualization. And he describes that there are a small number of people who he has studied who seem to be more free, happier, just a greater sense of enjoying and appreciating their lives than most people. Kind of emotional intelligence and a kind of just a real sense of being completely comfortable in their own skin, and I recognized, I think, how uncomfortable I was, and how just undeveloped and asleep I felt at that time, and I had this really strong sense that I needed to do something. I needed to find some way to become a more developed human being if I was ever going to feel any sense of happiness or satisfaction, or be able to live a more meaningful life. And that led me to begin investigating and reading about humanistic psychology and existentialism, but also I started reading some books. I was particularly drawn to some books I read about Zen, and that led me to come to the West Coast. And one day I happened to wander into the San Francisco Zen Center, this was I had taken a 1-year leave of absence from college to come to the West Coast, and that 1 year turned into 10 years of living at the San Francisco Zen Center, and I think in part it seemed like it was kind of going back to that, making that connection with Maslow and self-actualization that I felt like the path toward that was not only study, but there needed to be a practice, and somehow meditation practice. And for me, the practice of Zen seemed to offer a very concrete and doable path toward that kind of work. And I've been finding, in a way, that work has been what I've been doing, my entire adult life.
Okay, yeah, very interesting. And to come back what I said in the introduction, like this, what you found there with the meditation with Zen, and then like the business world for Google, is there anything in common, or is it really opposite?
Yeah. So one of the things that that surprised me was during the time I was living at the Zen Center, somehow I kept getting asked to take on leadership roles, from running a Zen monastery kitchen to my 10th year of living at the Zen Center. I was asked to be the director of this place. It's a place called Tassajara Zen Mountain Center, and it's a retreat center in the winter, and it turns into a conference center or a workshop center in the summertime, and where there are 70 or 80 overnight guests, and it was in that particular role that I had this aha that I was running a business, and that Tassajara, in addition to being a Zen practice place, had all of the challenges and opportunities of any other small business. We had a $1 million budget, and had to satisfy customers, and that I had this sense too that one that I was running a business. Two, I liked it. I was really enjoying leading and managing. We had a staff of about 60 people, and the other aha was that there seemed to be great resonance between mindfulness practice or awareness practice with work and getting things done. And I wondered why weren't all businesses incorporating these kinds of practices that seemed to make so much sense, to be that the more aware, the more conscious you could be, also that the more clear, the more caring, and these were all the practices embedded in mindfulness, but they also seemed that they would translate really well in the business world. And so, yeah, I left the Zen Center and went right and got an MBA degree, and then right out of business school, I ended up starting a publishing company. Actually, I started one of the first companies in the world to make things out of recycled paper. And I that was a company that I ended up running and growing, and spent 15 years running a company called Brush Dance. And so that was, I felt like I was in that CEO seat, and in the seat of an entrepreneur, and had a lot of experience of really trying to bring the sense of mindfulness and practice into the world of work. And then from there, found myself training Google engineers in mindfulness, and to be mindfulness teachers, and as well as working very closely with SAP, and a German-based company, and did quite a bit of work in helping to bring mindfulness into SAP as well.
Yes. And many of the experiences you made in these times are also part of the book you wrote, we spoke of earlier, and then to come to the book. The book has the title, The 7 Practices for a Mindful Leader. And I think these practices are surprising at the first glance, especially when it comes to leadership. And it's really beautiful that we have the opportunity that you can describe them a little bit here in this talk. So the first principle is love the work. So, and just to start with, why is this important?
Yeah. So maybe just as a way of starting this conversation about the practices, I find it useful sometimes just to name the practices as a whole, right? So you said the first practice is love the work, then do the work, don't be an expert, connect to your pain, connect to the pain of others, depend on others, and keep making it simpler. So I think as a whole, as a body, there's something kind of poetic and aspirational, but also at the same time, I think these practices are very practical, and that there's a way to there's a precision and a flexibility with practices, and there's something about I think there's something about practices. You know, people often think about, there's been a lot of very popular books written recently about habits. And habits, I think, are very important to develop really good habits. Practices are like habits, but they have a lot more, I'd say, intention. And they're meant to be kind of ongoing work that you keep examining and exploring.
It's
so back to your first question. So back.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So back to your question. You asked about the first practice, which is the practice of love the work. Yeah, so I think it's important to first just clarify that here, when people hear that, they often think about, oh, love the work that you're doing, which of course that's important and that's great. But this is a slightly different concept. This is to these practices came out of training Google engineers to become mindfulness teachers. That's where these practices came from. But that in the process, I realized that they were so much broad and had many broader applications than just becoming a mindfulness teacher. These practices represented how I wanted to show up as a leader and how I wanted to create a kind of business culture. And so love the work, the first practice is to love the work of mindfulness, the work of developing yourself, developing self-actualization, to become a more open, free, alive human being. That this is the work, and part of the work is the work also of helping others, to be of benefit to others, to help, to be someone who is solving real problems, right? So this practice, so in a way, this first practice is to bring a sense of real care into how you're developing yourself and your life. It's a kind of commitment to develop yourself and a commitment that is based in love, in that there's a kind of real a deep pull, deep commitment to becoming a more full human being.
Mm-hmm. And the practice 2 is quite closely related to this. Thank you for saying all the practices in the whole. So practice 2 is do the work, and I guess you mean more than just getting things done. So I think you also mean, so what do you mean with do the work?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, that I think is really important just to state also is that, again, and you brought up earlier these two worlds, what looks like these two worlds, the world of contemplative practice or mindfulness, and the world of business or work or corporate work, or the world of getting things done. But I think, and sometimes, to be realistic, there can be tension between, caring for people and getting things done. But there's also, I think, a tremendous amount of integration and possibility about bringing mindfulness, this practice of mindfulness, into the world of work, in terms of helping people to focus and helping people to widen their own perception and perspective, as well as the people-centered caring for people. So the second practice of do the work is to actually have an ongoing mindfulness practice and meditation practice. So I usually look at do the work as having two big components. One is what I think of as a dedicated practice, so to have some kind of way that in a regular way you're stepping out of the busyness of your life and having a meditation practice or a journaling practice, making time when you can let go of needing to get things done at all, and just to see what it's like to just be with your breath and body, and to allow for more full functioning as a human. But the other part of it, of do the work, is the other component is integrated practice as well. How do you bring mindfulness? How do you bring this mindset and this kind of this aspiration to be a full functioning human being? How do you bring that into your relationships? How do you bring that into your leadership? How do you bring that into the kind of company culture that you're creating? So this is the practice of do the work.
Mm-hmm. And then don't be an expert. This is also, I think, surprising, because like the traditional notion of a manager is that he knows or she knows the direction where to go, knows best what to do and how to do. And I think that's quite something very different. So don't be an expert. Is this compatible with leadership?
Well, I think it can be useful just to clarify that of course, when it comes to learning particular crafts, whether you're a businessman or a surgeon or a car mechanic or a musician, of course you should aim towards a kind of craft and expertise in that craft. But in the realm of leadership, in the realm of being a human being, in the realm of relationship, there's something important with letting go of this idea of being an expert. And it's, in a way, it's simply valuing ongoing learning, ongoing ability to learn, to experiment, to explore, to try things. And that in the realm of being a human being, in the realm of a relationship, which is an important part of business, which is an important part of our business relationships, our leadership relationships, it's a kind of ongoing, not insisting that I know, not insisting that I'm right, but instead to cultivate a kind of real deep curiosity about this leadership, emotional intelligence, and mindfulness practice.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's also connected to this depend on others, which will come later, the sixth principle, the sixth practice, yes. And an important aspect that also occurs in the book is pain, like the own pain and the pain of others. And so why is it important to be in contact with the own pain in order to lead mindfully?
Yeah, well, these two practices connect to your pain, and I think it's important that the word is connect to your pain and connect to the pain of others. It's a so often we've learned, and it's a natural human condition to avoid difficulty, to avoid anything that feels uncomfortable. And one of the things that I talk about in the book, I quote some of the work of a man named Peter Senge, who wrote a best-selling business book. Actually, it's been about 30 years now. A book called The Fifth Discipline, and it's a very, I think, a very important book about. It's a book about systems thinking, which is crucially important in the world of business. But in there, he makes a statement that that perhaps the most important quality of a successful leader is staying with their own discomfort, staying with the discomfort that we all have when we're trying to grow companies, when we're trying to meet goals. So when we recognize that we're in the world of work, we're always in this place of there's what is and there's what we're trying to accomplish, and staying with what he calls this creative tension or creative gap between where we are and where we want to be in our work is uncomfortable, and so there is something about that kind of discomfort, but also just the discomfort of being human, the discomfort of that we don't always get what we want, that things don't always work out the way we want them to, and the discomfort of change and dealing. We're in the middle of a incredible uncertainty, and there's always, I think, uncertainty involved with business, and there's always uncertainty involved with being alive. So it's just having a variety of tools, strategies, and practices for connecting with pain or connecting with discomfort, as well as it's important in terms of empathy and compassion to connect to the discomfort and pain of others. So these are the fourth and fifth practices of these 7 practices of a mindful leader.
Yes, I liked them very much, and I think it's so important that you stress them and that they are important for leadership. I mean, it's just important to mention this again and again. Yeah, and yes. So then we come to this depend on others, which is also connected to be connected to the pain, and has this depend on others has also a lot to do with trust, and also like we trust in team building. So could you say a few words for this?
Yeah, I think this practice has, I think they all have many very practical applications. This one in particular, I think, for the business world, depend on others, because everything in the world of work we're doing with other people. So this is a practice about, as you say, about cultivating trust. It's about cultivating our ability to be mentors and coaches. It's depend on others is a lot about how to make meetings work better. There's this whole section in the book about how to plan for, implement, and follow up on meetings. I also talk in this chapter about some really interesting studies that Google did about how to make teams work better, and how and what is it that makes for a great leaders or managers. So these are all practices on developing our giving ourselves over to that we can't do it ourselves, and that even though there's in a lot of Western culture, there's so much about stressing the individual, and as though I have to do it myself. And of course, yes, there is something important about self-reliance, but this kind of turns that on its head in a way and says, yes, and it is so important that we look at the value of our depending on others and our building high quality, high functioning relationships.
Mm-hmm. So we come to the last one, number 7, keep making it simpler, which is also so interesting because I think our world is getting more and more complex and things are getting more and more complex. And then you say just keep making it simpler. So can you explain this?
Yeah, I find, again, I really like a lot these 7 practices as a program, as a whole, and that there's something, it's kind of a relief after you kind of work on, it feels like so many different things to do, so many different things that are pulling at our attention. But this is like, forget all that. Just find, just come back to your breath. Come back to what really matters. Come back to what's most important. So in a way, this is the 7th practice. In some way, is meant to, as a container, as an integrator of all of the practices, which is, don't just keep noticing where you put your attention. Come back to your attention. There's an expression in the Zen world about drive all of your problems into one, right? Don't instead of this whole list of problems, there's just one problem, and the problem is usually trying to push our way our problems, or not wanting to have any problems. But so this is, there's a beautiful expression from the Zen world that says, you're perfect just as you are, and you can use a little improvement. And so this practice, this keep making it simpler, is to is that everything is okay, just as it is, a kind of radical acceptance. And from that place, you can make whatever changes or improvements you need. It's just a very different kind of mindset. It's a kind of mindset of around simplicity, clarity, staying with what really matters. Keep making it simpler. Yeah, it's a good thing to just keep coming back to how to simplify.
Yeah, so beautiful. So actually, that's a very good ending. That's a beautiful phrase for that. And what I like so much from what we were telling is that you mentioned this human aspect. So it's not about, because we have business, so it's not about profit, etc., but it's about being human. And is this also the reason why companies are more and more interested in mindfulness?
Yeah, I think that I think more and more companies are seeing that how important well-being is. That there's a real cost. There's a real cost financially and even in many ways about employees not taking good care of themselves. That's one. But also, I think the importance of collaboration, of how crucial it is that people be able to work together in a way that is with trust and effectiveness. But I also think there's also something, I think, about that people are understanding that that business is all human beings running companies. So, like, how important is it for leaders or for everyone to be able to focus, to be able to not be tossed around by their own by distractions, by unconscious bias. I mean, how important is it to develop a clear mind? Like, why isn't that just so obvious to anyone in the world of work, to develop a sense of clarity, as well as to develop one's emotional intelligence competencies, to be able to work, to develop your own sense of competence and confidence in yourself, and also to be this ongoing work of being more skilled at relationships.
Wow, wonderful. So thank you very much. It was so interesting. Thank you for for these practices, for your book and for your work, and again for taking the time that we had this conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Usha. Really appreciate it, and I'm thrilled at the German edition of 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader coming out. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.